Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our webinar, Getting the Glow. This is all about mastering your skin and your hair through the menopause transition. And I'm really delighted to be joined by the brilliant Harley Street dermatologist, Dr. Emma Wedgeworth and Dr. Rishika Sinha, alongside skincare brand founder, Dr. Sam Bunting. Now, as you will know, Dr. Claire and I are all about evidence-based, really easy to understand support for women through the menopause. And what we love about Dr. Rishika, Dr. Emma, and Dr. Sam and their approach is that it's no nonsense, it's science-based. And really what these three wonderful experts don't know about skin and hair care at any age really isn't worth talking about. So just a few housekeeping points before we kick off. The event is being recorded. It will be available to view later. We'll send you all an email with a link to the webinar, and we'll also share any links that we post in the chat this evening. Now, we want to make our conversation this evening as enjoyable and as engaging as possible. I think we're off to a good start. So feel free to put your questions in the chat and share any thoughts. And we'll leave time at the end for those questions in a Q&A, or we'll weave in as appropriate. Now, I'm sure you'll appreciate the team won't be able to answer individual specific medical queries, but they can, of course, respond at a broad level. Now, tonight, we're going to look at how and why the menopause transition impacts our skin and hair, the most common skin and hair concerns that women experience at this stage of life and the ways to manage them. And then really importantly, because this sometimes can feel absolutely overwhelming, how do you find the skincare routine that's right for you? How do you know which ingredients to include in that routine? And how do you identify the products that work? And I know Sam has so much expertise in this area, along with Emma and Rishika. So I think we'll all be looking for some really great tips and practical advice from that. And then we'll wrap up by looking at our experts' advice on the procedures that they would recommend to get healthy, glowing skin and hair, and how to decide if and when one might be right for you. So, Dr. Sam, Dr. Rishika, and Dr. Emma, welcome. It's really great to have you here this evening. I know you've all had really busy days in your clinics, so thank you so much for spending your evening with us. And we're going to kick off with a question for Dr. Rishika. So Rishika, it would be great if you could just start off by explaining to everyone how and why the menopause transition impacts our skin.
Thanks, Helen. Good evening to you and to everyone who's joined online. Thanks for inviting me and the team to speak with you all regarding this really important topic, which I have to say, I don't think it's really been given the importance it deserves in the public eye until the last few years. And now we're finally finding ourselves being able to talk more openly about this subject. So I hope I'm not being too simplistic by starting off to define exactly what the menopause is. So menopause is when a woman permanently stops having menstrual periods, and this officially begins 1 year after your last period. The transition phase before the menopause is often referred to as perimenopause, and this phase can last anything from 3 to 5 years. The average age for menopause in this country is 51 years old, but it can actually happen anytime from your 30s to your mid-50s or even later. And due to an increasing life expectancy, this can mean that some women in the UK are in the postmenopausal phase for a third of their lives, which is really huge. This period of time can bring with it some noticeable changes to your skin and hair, and it's mainly due to the associated reduction in the female hormones that are being produced, namely estrogen and progesterone. And this is because these hormones play a key role in skin health. So the skin is the body's largest organ, Helen, and it's comprised of 3 layers: the epidermis, dermis, and the subcutaneous fat. So the epidermis is the top layer, and it's known as the skin's barrier. And studies have shown that estrogen replacement can actually increase epidermal thickness, leading to an improved skin barrier, which means that you've got overall better hydration, less dryness, and less sensitivity of the skin, because your barrier is protecting you from the nasties such as chemicals and fragrances that can commonly irritate the skin. Lack of estrogen has also been shown to reduce ceramide production, which is the body's natural moisturizer, and it's the lipid layer. So a loss of that can lead to further dryness and impaired barrier function. Then onto the dermis, which is the middle layer of the skin. This contains collagen, which I'm sure a lot of you have all heard of, and that's a key protein in the skin, which gives our skin support and structure. Crudely speaking, having more collagen is associated with a more youthful look. And studies have shown that in the first 5 years after menopause, there's a decline in collagen by approximately 30%. After that, the decline is more gradual, and women lose about 2% of their collagen every year for the next 20 years. And as our collagen diminishes, our skin becomes thinner. We also produce less of our own hyaluronic acid in the skin during this time, so the skin is less hydrated, becomes less elastic due to reduced elastin production. So essentially, it's the fluctuation and decline in the female hormones that occurs in the perimenopause and menopausal period that causes overall changes in the physical structure of the skin, and that can have a significant impact on skin health.
So you've mentioned some of the terms you've mentioned there, they will resonate with people because they'll recognize them, that they'll see them advertised, you know, as ingredients and products. And I know we'll come to that in a moment. But clearly what you said is the hormone changes impact our skin. And so how our experience of our skin can change. So what conditions or symptoms, skin symptoms, do you see in particular around the menopause transition, Dr. Rishika?
So the most common skin concerns I see in my patients during this phase in life are usually manifesting as dry skin because of the dryness and loss of skin barrier function, itchy skin or forms of eczema, which are associated with the impaired barrier function as well. And also more and more commonly, Helen, I'm seeing patients with acne, rosacea, and pigmentation, to name a few.
And then I know we'll come to the different ways to treat and manage these in just a moment. But when you think about how, you know, upsetting these conditions can be for people, are there any lifestyle changes that you think people should consider as they're going through the menopause transition that would help them with their skin?
Absolutely. So there's quite a lot that we can do to help during this phase to help retain the function of the skin barrier. So that would be avoiding harsh soaps and washes when we're having a shower, and trying not to change too much or alter the pH of our skin. Moisturizing more frequently is really one of the basic things that we can all start doing, Helen, around this phase in life, and that can help retain the function of the skin barrier, make it less dry, keep it well hydrated. And then we can target more specific skin concerns like acne, but that's really case by case, and there's a lot that can be done during this phase to help things like acne and rosacea. A lot of my patients like to try short courses of oral antibiotics to try and control their acne or rosacea during this phase. Some of my patients prefer to go down the more gentle route where we focus on really bespoke, good, clean skincare. So it's very much dependent on what suits that individual.
And then if you suffered, you know, with problems with acne as a teenager, is that any predictor of how your skin might change when you're going through the menopause, or are they completely separate things?
I'm not sure it's completely separate, but there's certainly a complex interplay of factors when it comes to acne. So there is certainly genetic predisposition. It can be also associated with hormonal changes. So when women first get their periods, there can be an imbalance between the estrogen and androgen production, which can drive our sebaceous gland activity. Our sebaceous glands then produces lots of lovely sebum, which is the greasy stuff, which is really essential to stop our skin from drying out. But if it goes and clogs the pores, it can be one of the main starting points of acne. And when we come into the perimenopausal and postmenopausal phase, you get a similar imbalance in the estrogen and androgen levels in the skin, and that can trigger acne. So there can be a relation because of your genetic component. There can be hormonal factors. So a lot of my patients that do have acne in this perimenopausal and postmenopausal phase do report having had acne as a teenager.
I think that's really helpful to know, because, you know, knowledge is power. And if you know that it might have been an issue for you before, you can better prepare for it. And I'm sure we'll come to that in a moment. Now, a great question here from another Helen, just a practical question, Dr. Rishika. Does pigmentation mean getting brown spots on the skin?
So pigmentation is essentially defined as increased melanin production in the skin. So that tends to manifest as brown spots. Some patients that have less melanin production in the skin may get pigmentation that appears pink or red, but traditionally pigmentation is termed as an increased melanin production, which comes as tan-colored or brown.
Thank you so much for explaining that. And if we turn our attention now, Dr. Emma, to hair, and a similar question really, what's happening with our hair as we go through the menopause transition? We know that around 70% of midlife women experience thinning hair and hair loss. And our hair is such an integral part of our identity, isn't it? It can be extremely distressing and frustrating when that happens. So, Dr. Emma, what are the most common hair concerns that you see, and then what can we do about them?
So, I mean, you're absolutely right, Helen. It's terrifying. If you think you're losing your hair, and, you know, I think many of us will have been through it, it's absolutely terrifying. So it's really important to understand around what happens around the menopause and how we can actually address that. I mean, what's interesting in clinic is that from about mid-30s, I would say, I start to see women experiencing a bit of dissatisfaction with their hair volume in general. So we're already on a background of where, you know, for example, people will come and say, look, I know it doesn't look like much, but actually my ponytail is sort of half of what it was. This little degree of like frontal baby hairs here. I mean, who hasn't experienced that? So already we're starting to know that the hair volume has started to reduce a bit. Perhaps the hair follicles are just not as efficient as they perhaps once were. And then as we go into perimenopause and menopause, just as Rishika was saying, it's about the estrogen and the progesterone levels. So when we think about our hair has different sort of settings. So we have a growth phase where our hair is in full sort of growth phase, and that's called anagen. And normally about 90% of our hair, and a nice healthy head of hair, should be in this growth phase, anagen. And that should have a certain length so that actually your hair can get to the ideal sort of length that is right for the individual. But as we see a decline in estrogen, our hair shifts a lot from anagen, and our anagen, our growing phase, shortens. And so our hair just doesn't have as much time to grow. And then it shifts into more of either a shedding phase or a resting phase. And that's one of the reasons why we start to notice a loss of volume and perhaps increased shedding around the time of the menopause. And then also the reduction in progesterone can also change the way that our hair deals with our male hormones, our androgens. Now, we all know a lot about male pattern hair loss, right? Guys that lose their hair really quite early on. And that's, I think, talked about a lot. But actually, female pattern hair loss is actually pretty common. So we're looking at about, you know, half of women over the age of about 50 may start to notice a little bit of female pattern hair loss. And again, that's because the way that the hair follicles deal with androgens, the conversion of androgens into a different hormone starts to change. And the reduction in progesterone makes our hair follicles more prone to that. So we're going to start seeing more in the way of female pattern hair loss after and around the menopause as well. So that's the really bad news, Helen. And then that's all the stuff that I have to tell you. But there is so much that we can actually do about our hair.
Yeah, you're saving the good news for now.
Right. The good news for last. And it is so important, because I think the thing about hair is that once it's gone, it's tough. You're then looking at, like, you know, transplants and things like that. So you want to jump in as soon as you start to noticing it. And one thing I would say is that studies have suggested that actually by the time someone else can notice that your hair has been lost, you've actually lost a reasonable amount. So don't let people sort of fob you off. Whenever a woman comes into me and says, look, my hair is thinning, I don't care what I see on her hair. I'm listening to that, right? But we're not going in there saying, look, my hair's thinning. If we've really noticed that, that's the case. So, you know, take that sort of seriously, because that's a really good time to start to act. And often you can really make a difference and slow things down.
So what can we do to make a difference and to slow things? Because, you know, when you speak to your friends, and I speak to my girlfriends, you know, it does come up. People do see it. But, you know, what do you do? Do you buy shampoo? Do we go see a dermatologist like you? Like, I think there's just a lack of awareness of the options that are there.
100%. And also, like so many things in skin and hair, you know, people are not sure, oh, is it just me being vain? Is it me being paranoid? Everyone says, oh, you look fine, you look nice, you know, all of this sort of stuff. So first off, let's start with the simple stuff. So let's start with the lifestyle and also the way that we look after our hair. So nutrition, that's hugely important. So we know that we need to eat a reasonable amount of protein to actually really make the building blocks of our skin and our hair. So our hair is made up of different types of proteins. And if we have quite a low protein diet, that can sometimes be an issue. Now, if you choose to be plant-based, obviously there's some fantastic things about being plant-based, but you just need to make sure that you're getting all of the different amino acids and building blocks. And you probably just need to think really quite creatively about how that's going to happen. If you eat meat, eggs, fish, they are first-class proteins. They contain all the sort of building blocks that your hair needs. And so those perhaps a couple of portions of those a day, if that's what you are eating. Iron levels are super important. Now, for lots of reasons, iron deficiency is common amongst, you know, women generally, and particularly as you get into that perimenopause, some women will start to bleed quite significantly, can increase their iron. So the first step when I see a woman who's starting to be aware of their hair is perhaps to do some nutritional blood tests and to check for things like iron levels, zinc levels, vitamin D and some vitamin B levels, and just really check that everything's good from that sort of nutritional aspect. And enhancing protein intake. The next thing would be about how we style our hair. So our hair is really prone to environmental damage, and particularly as we get older, we often find that the quality of our hair, it breaks more easily. You know, it's just a little bit more fragile. And so the way that we deal with it, the way we style it, being careful when our hair's wet, it's actually very delicate. So just making sure that we're gently sort of blow drying it, we're using nice products, we're not over styling it, we're not over coloring it, we're just being really gentle with our hair. And then picking some great hair products which can help to protect the shaft of our hair. So looking at products which perhaps are sulfate free to really try and help reduce the damage to our hair, looking at things that perhaps like the Olaplex, which can repair some of the bonds within the hair. So that's a really nice place to start. And often with hair, you have to do things for a while. Our hair cycle is quite long. So if you do an intervention, wait 3 to 6 months to really see the sorts of improvements that you can have. And then we might need to take it further.
Well, look, there are some really brilliant practical tips. And as ever, I think so much starts with our lifestyle and our nutrition, what we're putting into our body. It's not a silver bullet, and it does take time. Now we've got I'm going to ask this question now because I think it fits really well with the conversation we're just having. A great question here from Adriana. How should we protect our hair if we color it? And then also, while you're on that, Dr. Emma, if you have any products that you would recommend, because again, you're an expert in this area, and just feel free to go for it, because I think people are looking for practically which ones are good and which ones should I avoid.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think in terms of hair coloring, look, I color my hair, and, you know, a lot of us at this sort of time will start to notice either a bit of gray creeping in. So I'm not saying in any way, shape or form, don't color your hair. Have a chat to your colorist and talk to them about sort of products which can be a little bit gentler. And similarly to your skin. So your skin and your hair can only take so much. So if you are coloring your hair, just make sure that everything else sort of in between is actually really gentle. And when you do go and see the salon, you may have a treatment, a sort of keratin style treatment or an Olaplex type treatment, which can really infuse and repair some of the bonds are very important around the quality of your hair. Your hair, the way that the proteins link together, have lots of different types of bonds, and those get damaged by repeated coloring and styling. And so repairing those can be really helpful. In terms of products, the sorts of things I really like. So I use Olaplex, I use K18, I really like the Living Proof stuff. I really like the Moroccan oil. And these are all quite gentle in the way that they, first of all, that they cleanse the skin, a bit like using quite a gentle cleanser on your skin. It's quite similar. You know, when I was in my 20s and teens, I practically could use anything from the supermarket I could use, and I'd be like, ka-ching. And now it's like, actually, I have to really be careful about what I use, because my hair is much more sort of weather beaten compared to when I was 18 and 20. Be careful about the type of styling products that you use. So we've got some amazing, and I know they're expensive, but incredible technologies that have come on from places like Dyson and GHD, which have really put a lot of research into the way that you style and blow dry your hair. And it really reduces the time and can help a lot with damage. So those are all things which I often recommend to patients in terms of just really improving the quality of hair.
Excellent. Well, look, we've had some more questions come in, Emma, but if we hold and if you have a look and see what they are, we'll come to them at the end. And Rishika, we've had some skin-related questions come in, which we can pick up with you at the end as well. But I'm keen to come to Sam now to talk about all things skincare routine, ingredients and products. And I've no doubt, Sam, we'll touch on lifestyle as well. So, Dr. Sam, your passion for skincare has led you to create your own excellent skincare brand, and I can speak from personal experience as well of using it. And again, what I love is you're all about keeping it simple, because life's busy. You know, that honestly, the thought, for me personally at least, the thoughts of coming up with a complicated skincare routine, I know it might last for about one day and then I just wouldn't have the time to do it, but you're very straightforward, very simple. So could you just, there's a lot in what I'm about to say, but if you could unpack for us and help us understand, based on your experience, what's the best way for people to find the skincare routine that's right for them? So which ingredients are going to be best for them and their skin, given where they're at? How do we know what strength to look at, what's right, and what's the right combination? What should we use in the morning? What should we use in the evening?
So I have a very simplistic, very reductive approach to building a skincare routine. And I think it starts with what you are trying to achieve. What is the goal? And I guess if we're talking in context of the menopause, it has to be tackling issues around barrier function in the first instance, because if you don't solve that issue, you won't be able to get onto any of the fun stuff involving active ingredients. So you have to address the barrier issue that comes about because our skin loses estrogen receptors, and that tendency to lose water, transepidermal water loss, increases as we go through the menopause. So that's the first thing. So do no harm and support your skin barrier, I would say, is principle number one. And then number two is focusing on the changes that are coming about because of the changes in your hormones. And fundamentally, we've talked about it already, losing collagen, 30%, a third of the thickness of your dermis in the first 5 years will have a traumatic effect on thinning the skin and making it more prone to wrinkling. We also lose our elastin, I think a protein that's talked about less, but is actually really fundamental, because if we lose the snap in our skin, it tends to be first noticed around the eyes, where elasticity changes lead to just changes in the way the skin moves. It's often the very first sign of aging we ever see in a face. So tackling that, because once your elastin is damaged, you don't get any more. So that's really critical. And again, that's something that's related to estrogen levels. So we lose quality and quantity of our elastin. And then we do experience breakouts, you know, this shift in the balance where we're less estrogen dominant, tending towards more relative raised levels of progesterone, and testosterone do make us more breakout prone. So it's a real mixture of things that need to be solved. And this problem with the skin barrier can really be fundamental to sort of creating an obstacle to getting control of your skin and actually achieving these goals of maintaining skin thickness, skin snappiness, and just overall radiance. And then Rishika's touched on rosacea. That's something that can be almost escalated as the flushing part of the menopause affects the skin. HRT can contribute to pigmentation. So we're dealing with a lot. So I think it's really why it is important to get that foundational approach to your routine sorted. So for me, when I was building the brand, I mean, there was a reason why we started with the cleanser, because if you get cleansing wrong, it's very hard to get skincare right. If you take away too much, if you attempt to problem solve, and you get lots of cleansers nowadays with active ingredients in there, it really is a struggle, because really we're best off tackling problems with ingredients that are targeted, that we can leave on the skin, that we can know the concentration that we're delivering to the skin, and do things in a very methodical, scientific fashion. And I guess the brand really was built to mirror exactly what the three of us do in the clinic. This really focused approach. We don't recommend products that are really not going to add value and that might actually take away some of that precious space that our skin barrier permits us. Really, that sort of reductive approach, you're just doing the most efficient system of products to get you the best possible results with the least possibility of problems. So get cleansing wrong and it's hard to get skincare right. So Flawless Cleanser, first product on the market. I created the brand in part because other brands kept discontinuing cleansers that I found were fundamental to the way I practiced. And it made it very difficult for me to build these potent active-based routines, because if the cleanser does too much and it whittles away an already sensitive skin barrier, you really are in trouble. So get cleansing right and it sets you up for success. Small but important, meaningful tips, I think. Try to use nothing rougher than fingertips. And sorry, my computer just went off.
Yeah, no, you're still here.
Nothing rougher than fingertips. I tend to avoid any kind of assisted cleansing because all of that is really going to deplete your barrier. It's a form of exfoliation, even just something as simple as a flannel. Use your fingertips, tepid water. Take your time. I am an advocate of a single cleanse. Each time you do a cleanse, you are taking something away. And in this situation, we want to do as little as possible. If your skin is very dry in the morning, it is fine to skip cleansing altogether. Really, cleansing at night is required. We're taking sunscreen off, we're taking makeup off, we're taking the grime of the day. But if your skin is very dry and you're not troubled by excess oil or breakouts, then skipping the morning cleanse is absolutely fine. But I think that's kind of the first pillar. Cleanse correctly. Then we go to our active, because then we can kind of retrofit the rest of our routine around that. So we want to hang on to collagen. That is fundamental. 30%, a third of our skin thickness. We want that in our routine, if at all possible. Retinoids are the gold standard when it comes to preventing collagen loss and replacing it. We can actually improve our collagen levels. So a retinoid is often a scary thing for people who've never used active skincare before, but it doesn't have to be when the rest of the routine is very simple and supportive. So we've used a molecule called Gran-Active retinoid, and I think of that as a really excellent starter retinoid. We have it in a 2% strength and a 5% strength. And I think increasingly there's this movement towards transparency around ingredient levels. So you know what you're getting when you purchase a product. You know what else is in the formula with it. We've combined it with other actives so that you get this kind of synergy. So you can get one layer to really do a lot of work for your skin. And I think that's the thing, is knowing what you're starting out. This is a long haul. We've talked about skin changes, hair changes over the course of months. And I think if you set the goalposts in a realistic place, our most common frequency of follow-up appointment every 3 months, that tells you something. That's a couple of skin cycles. That is how long it generally takes for something you've put in place on day one to have its effect, to see where you're going, to see how much improvement you get. So when you think about things in blocks of time of that length, you can see why it really isn't important to do everything at once. You do things in a slow, steady way that ultimately leads to consistency, which is probably the most important quality when it comes to getting results from your skincare routine. So retinoids go in the slot for actives at nighttime, because retinoids are used away from ultraviolet, which can inactivate them and render them useless. And then really all else you need at nighttime is a moisturizer. So you want something hydrating. So that's really about helping repair and restore your skin barrier. It's about making your skin look smooth and bright. A big part of why our skin looks better when we moisturize, it fills in lines and wrinkles, it traps water in the surface, everything just looks more juicy. So a great moisturizer really is an essential part of a skincare routine at this time in your life. And I think you can go a little richer at nighttime. We're less worried about looking shiny or having any residue on our skin. Really, we want a functional product that creates space for our skin in the morning.
Excellent.
So that's night. Pretty much done. You can, of course, do something dedicated to the eye area, the needs of the eye area. We really are all about that skin thickness. Constant smiling and facial expressions generally mean that the skin is being squeezed. Lines are potentially being etched in. Nothing wrong with lines around the eyes, of course. These are positive lines. Usually they indicate we're smiling, we're happy. But if you want to mitigate the pressure of the squeeze, then building thickness by focusing on collagen health is really going to help. And again, a dedicated retinoid eye product is going to help because it needs to be adapted a little bit strength-wise for the eye area. The skin there is significantly thinner than it is on the rest of the face. Just like the neck, I like to think of treating the eye and the neck area, and also potentially the backs of the hands. These are areas that get a lot of sunshine. That means they potentially age faster than other parts of our skin, and they're on show all the time. And really, we want everything here to match. Yes, so face, neck, chest, hands is where the passport guys look, down here and here. So retinoid, I think, is the main thing to focus on at nighttime. You can add in a little niacinamide, which is vitamin B3, which is a wonderful ingredient to partner with your retinoid. It can actually help build the skin barrier. It's good for fine lines and wrinkles. It's great for blemish-prone skin, which of course retinoids are also. So really we have an overlapping Venn diagram of active ingredients that work super well to tackle the key things that we're concerned about at this time. And that can go in your moisturizer, that can even be built into the retinoid formulation. It doesn't mean an extra step. We're still getting to bed as efficiently and quickly as possible, but we're getting maximum bang for our buck in terms of simple but effective choices. Daytime has more nuance, okay? So nighttime is all about repairing and restoring and regenerating. And that's a safe time for the DNA in our cells to do that. Retinoids interact with 3,000 genes and probably more. They pretty much affect almost every facet of how our skin behaves. But you want to do the DNA repair work away from sunshine because DNA is sensitive to ultraviolet and potentially gets damaged. So that's really the focus of the nighttime routine. So come to the morning, you may or may not have cleansed depending on how dry your skin is feeling. And then really you're focused on defense. So if we start then at the kind of the outermost part of the routine, that's the sunscreen. Really, I mean, we shouldn't even have talked about retinoids when we talk about sunscreen, because of course our sunscreen is going to help prevent the part of aging that is preventable. And as much as 80% is preventable, 20% is down to our genes, 80% is down to the environment. So daily use of sunscreen in a correct way is really the kind of crucial first thing to do once we kind of covered off cleansing. And you asked about sunscreens and the price point that one should spend. I mean, the simple answer to that is you should buy the one that you like using, that will use enough of every day to be able to build a daily habit. It's that straightforward. If you can find one at £1 that is broad spectrum and ideally SPF 50 because you want to get that high UVA and UVB protection, and if you can get that at £1, super duper. I think for most of us, a little more investment around sunscreen is probably worthwhile because it builds, you know, you find a product you enjoy using. And I think for a long time, sunscreen was this thing that people were, ugh, you know, do I have to? It's not even sunny. Like, why do I have to wear this kind of gooey thing? It'll break me out. There was all sorts of objections. It makes me look white and streaky. You know, my makeup won't stay on. We have come a long way. The sunscreen category has completely transformed. And now you have evangelical tweens, you know, wanting to buy Supergoop at Space NK. So, and that's a wonderful thing, that kind of trickle down of kind of awareness around sunscreen importance. And then it's, you know, this change in consumer behavior. It's a wonderful thing. So bottom line, at least SPF 30, broad spectrum. I think go SPF 50 and get the maximum you can. Put it on correctly. It's a bigger dose than most people would like to apply. I didn't make the sunscreen rule, but you know, get your teaspoons out. Know what a half a teaspoon of product or the 2-finger rule. 2 long fingers is probably sufficient as well. Get used to putting that correct dose on every single day, and your skin will thank you for it for sure. Personally, I love a tinted sunscreen in summer. I find that to be a super easy way when I'm not maybe doing, you know, on camera activities. I'm running around doing errands, I'm outdoors, maybe I'm popping out for lunch. I can pop a layer of it on again through the day. I think that's the thing. A lot of us, good at putting on the first layer, maybe not so good at topping up. And if you are someone who's pigmentation prone, particularly you have melasma, you just need to build that into the way your day goes. If you walk a dog, you run at lunchtime, you're out with the pram, your kids, you know, whatever it might be, you need to build in these little things that allow you to adopt behavior you can be consistent with. So that's that consistency word again. So sunscreen, find the one you like, put it on generously, put it on again. All right. So obviously wear hats and things when you're at the beach, you know, do all those kind of sensible things. But for this daily behavior where we're trying to kind of protect our collagen, protect our elastin, I think those are the important considerations. Then when it comes to other actives, I mean, again, I think daytime is about antioxidants and potentially about pigmentation solutions. But I think let's start with antioxidants because they give us this extra layer of protection. They can help us against things like high energy blue light and pollution. elements that aren't necessarily blocked by our sunscreen, but still contribute to something called oxidative stress, which is one of the fundamental causes of why we age. These free radicals get developed in our skin, and we want to kind of squash them. We want to neutralize them. So vitamin C, vitamin E, ferulic acid, these are ingredients that are really effective at helping us manage oxidative stress in our skin. Yes, we get vitamin C and E from our diet, but our body has sometimes other priorities. Maybe the skin isn't top of the list that day. So supplementing gives you control, and you know you're getting this extra layer of defense on your skin. So that's something I really like to build into a routine. Collagen is fantastic. Vitamin C is fantastic for helping us with our collagen. It's an essential cofactor when we're building good, strong collagen. So that's something that, again, applying that topically is excellent. And then, yeah, other ingredients, we can think about redness with azelaic acid. That's also great for pigmentation. It's kind of the skin barrier. So there are a variety of things that I rely on and have built into the range. The good thing is that most of the products are multitasking. So whether you've got pigmentation or redness or blemishes, there is a nice overlap that allows you to use the same ingredients in different scenarios. Really, it's just about the speed at which you introduce things. If your skin is behaving very sensitively and really dry, you go slowly, you do one active at a time, you bear in mind this months to month kind of timeline, and there's simply no rush. Every 6 weeks, how's it going? Check in with yourself, tinker a little bit, increase the frequency, increase the dose. And the thing that I think we did that really, a good job of with the brand is we built a routine finder, because this confusion, this overwhelm, I feel like I've tried everything, but I'm not getting results. I don't know where to go with it, was something that really loomed large. It's what we were seeing when people were coming into the clinic in the early days. And I thought, well, if I'm going to make a brand, I want to make sure people know how to put the products together to get the results that I intended, because, I think of it as the apple of skincare. Everything's designed to be used together. So Routine Finder allows you to plug in 1 or 2 concerns, and basically it tells you the routine and how to use everything together with videos to show you how to apply everything. So it really does remove the guesswork and makes it easy and actionable.
Look, I think that's great, because Sam, I've been looking down here to the right of my screen, because the questions have been coming in thick and fast for all of you. Emma's just posted, my lovely colleague Emma has just posted a link to your routine finder, so people can check that out there. So I'm just going to run through some of the questions that are particularly relevant to this for you, Sam, for our conversation now. We'll have a quick chat about procedures, and then we've got lots of questions for Dr. Rishika and Dr. Emma as well. So I suspect we might not have time to get to everyone's, but this is a bit like Mastermind. This is your specialist subject. The questions will be coming at you thick and fast over the next few minutes. Okay, so Sam, lots of questions for you about the routine and about the ingredients. A practical question from some people around taking collagen supplements, and do you think they're effective? Or do you think it's better to take it in a cream on your face?
No, I think there are different ways to skin the cat, so to speak. I mean, at the end of the day, collagen supplements are another source of a good mix of amino acids. Yes. So, we consume meat, we consume salmon, fish, we consume dairy. There's lots of different sources of protein. For me, where collagen supplements are useful is if I don't think I'm getting enough of that high class protein. And then it's worth topping up. There are certain amino acids that we need to build collagen that are potentially more easily a collagen supplement kind of formulated with that intention. But I don't think a collagen supplement replaces the need for a retinoid or a sunscreen or antioxidant serum. I think it's part of it. And, as an individual, your own diet, whether or not of the right things. Like, I think it's so important to eat for skin health. Your colorful vegetables, your red orange things that are rich in lycopene, like sweet potato and tomatoes, broccoli, your kind of dark leafy cruciferous vegetables, berries. You really can't eat enough berries. So knowing that these kind of colorful, nutrient-dense foodstuffs, I think, should always be the front line of your nutrition. But I think it also makes sense to have a smart supplementation as well. And I mean, personally, I take vitamin T, I take a good fish oil, What else do I take? I take NMN, which is a way of boosting cellular energy. And I'm currently taking a course of Simprov for gut health. So I think it's really important to get the right advice around that. But it all starts with good nutrition. And first-class protein, as Emma said, is super important to build great hair and great skin.
Yeah, no, excellent. And then again, some really brilliant practical questions here. So how long should one leave between applying a retinol and moisturizer?
Most of the time, just until it's touch dry, really. The main thing is to take care. If you applied a retinoid here and you don't mean to get it on the eyelids, the commonest early mistake, I think, is people put on their retinoid on to cleanse skin at night, and then they moisturize over the top and they accidentally scoot a bit of retinoid into the eye area. Unintentionally, they wake up with some redness and puffiness the next morning. It can be really discouraging. I advocate something called the moisturizer goggles, which sounds ludicrous. But basically, if you're early days in your retinoid journey, you put a thick layer of moisturizer around the thin, sort of delicate eye area up to the brow bone. You can feel it. And then you do your retinoid around that. And then you can put your moisturizer on over the top, knowing that you've protected the eye area. Same for the lips, and you can even try it for the jawline. So it just avoids those nasty surprises. I also have a thing called the 13 dot technique. Use a tiny amount of retinoid, no more than a pea. It should barely cover the face. And that's when you know you're doing the dosing right and you're less likely to have problems.
Okay, fantastic, really practical. Is it a night cream that already includes retinol good, or is it better to have them separate?
I mean, in a sense, the format doesn't matter too much. I mean, our nightly eye product is a moisturizing product, but what's more important is that the right things are in there. So it's 2% ground active retinoid, it's vitamin B3, it's a little bit of vitamin C. And then it happens to have a nice moisturizing base, but you could use something that's less moisturizing and moisturize over the top. But I think it starts with getting the right actives on the skin in the first place, and then hydrating as much or as little as you need.
Excellent. And then I think the link to your routine finder will help this lady, but our question is, how do you include vitamin C serum, retinoid serum, sunscreen into a routine? So in other words, we've talked about lots of different ingredients, lots of different products.
Yeah.
I would imagine you don't need to use every product, all the time, but what's your advice for the principles around the best combination, Sam?
So retinoids go in pride of place at night because of their tendency to be broken down by ultraviolet. At least most of them are. So that tends to be that's straightforward. And then you put the vitamin C in the daytime because that's part of your defense. So that goes on to cleanse skin usually, then moisturizer, and then sunscreen. So that would be the order of things.
Excellent. We've got some questions around your brand. Emma's put the links in, so that's really helpful. Lovely compliment for you all. You all look gorgeous. I'm going to come back to this question at the end, but just so you have time to think about it. For each of you, what's your holy grail product or treatment? We all want your secret. So that would be great. Just looking down here, there's lots of questions, and I'm going to go back up again in a moment for the others. Any at-home devices with good evidence behind them to support menopausal skin?
I mean, I think home devices are always going to be a lot less effective than devices that you get in clinic. And I think whenever you're approaching procedures, the most important thing is to understand what it is that you want to achieve and work out what modality of treatment is going to do that. So the hype around like laser and needling and all of this, people just talk a lot about these terms and they're like, do I need laser? And you're like, what are you trying to treat? So if you want to buy a home device, work out what is it that you actually want to treat. So for example, if we think about a laser, if you've got a sunspot that you want to treat with laser, a home laser device is very unlikely to do that. If you want to deal with sort of volume loss and sagging, a needling device is very unlikely to do that. So we just need to be very aware of what it is that you actually want to do. On the whole, I'm not a massive fan of home devices because I think that they are considerably sort of underpowered compared to what we can do in clinic.
It's very practical, and not surprising, as you say, because they have to be, I imagine, to a safer standard when they're at home. I've just a little post for Emma. she's going to resend all the links. They haven't gone to everyone, just to some of the people who've responded. So that's just coming through in a moment. So we've had Rishika, I'm just going to put some questions to you, but you'll have seen them coming through. Lots of questions about rosacea in particular, and how you can and can't treat it. So if we start off, with a great, pragmatic question, what causes rosacea?
Yeah, I saw lots of questions about rosacea, Helen, so thanks for coming to that. So rosacea is really interesting, and actually it's classified as a chronic inflammatory skin problem that can affect children through to young adults and as we all get older. And rosacea is actually a problem of multiple different factors. There's problems with the skin barrier, which makes our facial capillaries more hypersensitive and hyperreactive. That can cause redness and inflammation and quite a lot of flushing. There's also some evidence to suggest that people that have rosacea have an increased level of Demodex mite that sits in the skin. And when I mention this, I think some people get a bit terrified thinking they have mites, but these mites are actually quite normal. They're part of our skin microbiome. But when you have an increased number of these mites, they cause some of the redness and the capillary instability. So that also contributes to rosacea. Interestingly, there's no medical evidence to show that hormonal changes contribute to rosacea, but rosacea most commonly occurs in women from the ages of 35 to 50. So again, a really similar period of time when we're going through that perimenopausal, menopausal phase. But there's no hormonal link. However, I think when you're in that perimenopausal phase or menopausal phase, you've definitely got disruptions with your skin barrier. That can make your capillaries more unstable. It can make you flush more easily, it makes you more red. Also, with the hot flushes, you can vasodilate and get more redness. So there is some sort of interaction with rosacea and this perimenopausal and menopausal period.
Excellent. And then Dr. Rishika, some questions here as well about using retinol products with rosacea, or if you develop eczema. Emanuela, thank you for your question. If you develop eczema during the perimenopause around your eyes, or rosacea, so when your skin is more sensitive, is it still okay to use retinol products?
Yeah, so that's a really, really great question, and actually a common problem. So with rosacea, our skin becomes more sensitive because of disruptions with the skin barrier. Retinol and the retinol derivatives are great at turning over the top layer of the skin, but as they do that, they can disrupt your skin barrier function. So it's really important, as Sam has said, to try and find a routine that will work for you. So the key is cleansing gently, using products that will help maintain your skin barrier or build your skin barrier function back up, and then introducing a retinol. So there are different grades of retinol products, different grades of retinoids, and you can start off at the very gentle, low level and gradually work your way up, which is what I tend to do with a lot of patients I see in clinic, and really sort of think about what's the right strength and at what period of time do we transition onto the higher strengths. So if you're prone to eczema, dry skin during this perimenopausal or menopausal phase, then start low, start slow, and gradually titrate upwards. So you can start off with Sam's products, which are great, and then if you're seeing some really good benefits and you really like the results, you can actually titrate up to prescription strength. But keeping your skin barrier intact is key. So, finding a really good skin routine that works for you will help you do that.
Okay, excellent. And somebody's asked here, does applying something cold, if you have rosacea prone skin, does applying something cold help, or are they better to avoid temperature extremes?
That's really tricky, isn't it? So you'd think sort of, pragmatically, if you're flushing and you're going quite hot and red because of rosacea and also the menopausal changes, then applying something cold should help. Actually, there is some evidence to suggest that by vasoconstricting with coldness, you then get a reflex, a paradoxical dilation. So you get more red. following the application of something cold. So it's not something that I would recommend. And there are other ways of trying to deal with that sort of vasodilation, the redness and the flushing. Azelaic acid is a great ingredient. You can find it in lots of different skincare products. Lots of cosmetic companies are using it now. And azelaic acid is a great anti-inflammatory. Sunscreen is also, I think, key to help stabilize some of the redness, because UV is probably the #1 aggravator when it comes to rosacea. And so there are other ways of trying to manage that redness. So I wouldn't suggest applying cold products.
Yeah, that's very clear. Thank you very much. Dr. Emma, a couple of questions for you. We had several questions around hair supplements. Are there any that you'd recommend? And then your advice about products for afro hair that has been chemically relaxed. So thank you, Helena, for that question.
Yeah, so the supplement aspect is just basically, as Sam said, have a think about your diet. You know, where are you individually sort of lacking? And that's where you really want to be thinking about supplementation. We want to be intelligent with our skincare, we want to be intelligent with our supplements, because we want to give our body the things that we need. And actually taking high doses of supplements that we really don't need is not ideal. So having a think about our diet, and if you are noticing some changes within the hair, maybe thinking about having some blood tests, which was something that I said before. The other thing to be aware of is once you have sort of supplemented your skin, your vitamins for your hair, you may still find that that's not the total answer. And I always think of it a bit like the factory may have all the individual components, but actually the machinery is not working quite well. And I think we didn't get on to saying, but that's the point where you should definitely go and seek some help, because sometimes it's about the way that the follicles are using all of the ingredients that they use. And so actually that's the point where you might need some medical treatment. And I saw someone asking about spironolactone, minoxidil, things like that. So it's really important to know when that ceiling is. And I think that's a key thing in skin and hair. It's like, how much can I do in lifestyle and how much do I need a little bit of help with that? So that's really important. Afro hair, such a good point, because actually afro hair has really unique sort of needs. All of our hair is quite different. So Caucasian hair, the way that the bonds work, the thickness of various different things, and afro hair is really quite different. And so if you have had a lot of sort of chemical relaxation, really trying to move away as much as you can, because your hair can become more brittle. And we do sometimes see some specific hair disorders in people of color, particularly with afro hair. So it's really important if you're noticing a pattern of hair loss, and that's a key aspect as well. You know, if it's one thing is diffuse hair loss, if it's everywhere, if it's volume of ponytail, but if you're noticing sort of central changes or individual patches, that's definitely time to go and see a doctor or a dermatologist.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's very, very clear, very practical advice. So last question for Sam around sunscreens, and then I'm going to ask you for your holy grail preferred product and your secret to looking fabulous. Sam, lots of great questions around sunscreens, as I said. So again, a really practical one. What's the right order to apply things? Do you put your sunscreen on first and then your moisturizer, then your sunscreen?
No,
Put a sunscreen in your moisturizer. What's the best way?
I mean, you can get sunscreen in just about every product now, but at the end of the day, I think you get the best results and you are more inclined to use a sunscreen correctly if you have a dedicated SPF, and they tend to be formulated with higher UVA protection. You can get a lot of moisturizers with SPF 25, 15, this kind of thing, but you will only get the level of protection on the pack that's promised if you use a dose. It's a bit like medicine. So this is based on a rule, 2 milligrams per centimeter squared, which works out to be a half a teaspoon if you're trying to treat the face and the neck. So I find that it's about practical tips to make that easier. Sometimes it's about applying it in 2 layers, letting one layer dry and then putting another one on. So, you know, it's sort of knowing yourself and knowing where you're inclined to cut corners, because the average consumer, without really having that kind of, you know, slammed home, will apply around 1/4 of the desired amount. So it's the last layer. So it means that really, if you want to wear makeup on top, you have to choose one carefully, because then it's almost acting like your primer. And I think if you're smart, you can choose sunscreen that behaves like a primer. And as I said, if you choose a tinted one, you use one that potentially gets rid of the need for foundation altogether, and maybe you just use a little bit of concealer strategically for blemishes or dark circles. But sunscreen is your outermost layer, usually then moisturizer if you're using one. Of course, you can skip a moisturizer altogether. If your sunscreen is hydrating enough, you only need a moisturizer separately if you haven't got enough hydration coming in from your sunscreen, because the vehicle will have moisturizing properties. And then you're getting closer to the surface of the skin, so that's usually where your actives will sit. But if you weren't using actives, it would be cleanse, moisturize, hydrate. Sunscreen, sorry. Yeah, outermost layer.
So sunscreen on the outside. And is it important that we put sunscreen on our neck as well?
I mean, for sure. Yes. As I say, we want everything to match. So I think it's really important to take it all the way down to whatever skin is exposed. I mean, clothing is a good form of sun protection. So if you're wearing, nicely, tightly woven fabrics, then you won't need to apply sunscreen on those places. But if your neck and chest are getting exposed, for sure, you want to protect them the same way that you protect your face.
Excellent. Thank you. And then a question here. Do you rate the Super Goop sunscreen?
Sure.
I'm not familiar with it. Yeah.
I think, as I say, if they've been tested according to the standard measures and the SPF is high, the UVA protection is adequate, then, carry on, make sure it doesn't block your pores and it has a nice finish. But then it's just about the right dose. So, but I think people are more inclined to put more sunscreen on when they like the formula.
Excellent. Very good. That's really clear. Dr. Rishika, I'm going to direct the last question to you, and then we'll wrap up. I think we could speak for another hour at the rate the questions are coming in, and we haven't even got to procedures. So maybe we'll come back and do a session with you another time for that. But a very specific question here about antibiotics for rosacea or perioral dermatitis that are not photosensitive. Do you have any recommendations on that front, Dr. Rishika?
Yeah, I saw that one, Helen. I think, so doxycycline, limicycline, and the tetracycline group of antibiotics tend to be photosensitive. If that's the case, I do like to use erythromycin. Now, the problem is, Helen, a lot of medications come with potential side effects, so it's not a case of being 100% safe. So erythromycin can be more favorable than the tetracyclines if we're looking for an antibiotic that's not as photosensitive, but really the best thing to do would be sun protection. So if you did need an antibiotic for your perioral dermatitis, you take that and you just be diligent with your sun protection. So that means, just as Sam said, applying adequate quantities 20 minutes before you leave the house, reapplying every 2 hours, and actually a hat with a wide brim can really help as a sun protective measure if you're taking antibiotics, because people take antibiotics for all sorts of different indications and the photosensitivity risks are there. We just protect ourselves if we need to do that.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So last question for all of you. Emma, I'll start with you. What's your secret to looking so great? What's your most preferred routine or product?
Okay, so I'm going to take it first, and it is about sun protection. It's such a significant proportion of what changes our skin, what damages the texture, the tone, all of that sort of aspect is sun protection. And actually, I've always been super, super careful. That's definitely like one product. But the other thing that I really want to mention, because this is something that I see all the time in menopausal women, is a real negativity around appearance and around sort of aging. And I think that's the other thing that we all really have to embrace. We will change a bit. It's okay. Let's fix the things that we can fix. Let's not sweat the stuff that we can't too much. And let's just try and be really sort of confident in our maturity and new sort of chapters. And that's something that I talk about all the time with my patients, because we've got so much to offer, like as slightly more mature women. And I know I'm only in my 40s, but so much to offer, so much more, I think, than I had when I was completely online. So let's embrace it.
Woohoo! Here. Rishika, what would you like to share with us?
So if I'm allowed to, I would probably say the same as Emma. In terms of sunscreen, because again, as we know, so Ultraviolet rays is radiation that contributes to collagen degradation. So as we're hitting this perimenopause or menopausal phase, it's actually the two factors coming together. You know, the effects and the reduction in collagen is even more huge. So that makes sunscreen even more important. But if I may add an ingredient number 2, I have to say I do love my azelaic acid. It's been a key ingredient for me. I've been troubled with acne for many years, and I discovered it really later on down the line, and it works so well. It's a great anti-inflammatory, great anti-pigment. It makes the top layer of your skin less sticky. So if I could have a number 1 and number 2, number 1 would be sunscreen and number 2 would be azelaic acid.
Fantastic. Great tips. Thank you so much, Rishika. Sam, how about you?
Well, I'm feeling pretty gutted here because those two stole my favorites. I mean, I've been an azelaic acid cheerleader, I feel like, for the last 10 years. And, you know, we only had it on prescription, really, but I started out in private practice. And now, you know, we as Rishika said, we have it in lots of products. I know it's kept me up at nights because it's the hardest ingredient in the world to formulate with. We have two of the serums, neutralizing gel and brightly serum, both contain azelaic acid, and both of them took literally years to get to market. It's that hard to formulate with, but oh my goodness, it's worthwhile. And I think particularly for tricky skin where there's more than one thing going on. So lots of us have a bit of redness, a bit of acne, aging concerns, the barriers becoming more sensitive as we get older. So it's that whole hodgepodge that can really be like, what can I use? And as Rishika rightly said, it nails so many different concerns and things that are a bit at odds with each other, because we're okay at treating like pigmentation and acne together because, you know, we're not necessarily dealing with redness and sensitivity. So it's that situation where azelaic acid really, I think, almost turns the dial down on skin sensitivity that then often allows us to bring in other stronger actives downstream. So you can get somebody with rosacea started on azelaic acid, a little bit of niacinamide, and then 6 months later, you find that you're able to use a prescription retinoid, which would have been unthinkable when they came in with their full-on flare. So I had to get that in. Sorry, Rishika, but, you know, it is a brilliant ingredient. But then I think then number 2 has to be retinoids. They are fundamental to how healthy skin behaves and functions. You know, we have around 20,000 genes in each cell of our body. About 15,000 of those are switched on our skin, and retinoids interact with around 20% of those active genes. That is how fundamental to healthy skin it is. So I think for a lot of people, they've had bad experiences. They've put them to the side and thought, that's not for me, I can't use that. I would urge almost everyone to go at it again with fresh eyes and hopefully some fresh knowledge tonight as to why I think almost everyone, apart from people who shouldn't be using, like people who are pregnant, can use a retinoid and really do great things for their dermis.
Thank you, ladies, experts, doctors. That was absolutely fantastic. You've demystified so much around, you know, what causes all these issues, but really importantly, the range of solutions that are out there. And, you know, I love the point around embracing this stage of life. You know, you've all touched on it, you know, we're barely halfway there. So we still want to kick ass and look and feel our best for the next 40, 50 years as well. And you've really demystified and I think really stripped it back and simplified so that to help people focus in on the things that really matter and that will make a difference. Thank you so much. And I know you've done this on the back of a very busy day in the clinic, so really appreciate that you brought so much energy to the conversation. And I'd like to say a big thank you to my colleague Emma, who's been busy in the background, posting lots of links to Sam's website and to my Menopause Centre. But go check out the products, check out the videos. Sam has a brilliant YouTube channel where she shares lots of great advice and information. And we'll include all these links that we've shared with you and the correct spelling of all the products, because there's been lots of questions around spellings of the different ingredients and products as well. So we'll have that all in there. Thank you very much. You've been a brilliant audience. It's been such good fun. It's been a great conversation and great questions. So hope you all enjoy the rest of the evening and no more storms wherever you are. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Helen. Thanks,
Thank
Emma.
you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.